Gail Zuckerman, and this is Growing Older with Gusto. Each episode, I interview people who are growing older in an inspiring way. Whether you're 30, 60, or 80 years of age, these interviews will help to conquer your fear of aging. Please subscribe to our channel and check out our website at www.growingolderwithgusto.com. Welcome to Growing Older with Gusto, fellow superagers. I am Gail Zuckerman, your host. This podcast was created to help younger generations learn from the wisdom of older people how to embrace all the years left in their life. Whether you're 30, 60, or 90, you can still pick up some tips. So I recently met someone who, in a little bit of a twist to our show, at a young age captured, I believe, some of the wisdom of people that we've had on the show who are much older. So today we are going to be speaking with Alana Dawson, I believe from South Dakota, and she has given a lot of thought on the matter of growing older and how she wants her life to be as she grows older. And her work today is actually a result of a turning point that happened to her, a really very important life event, which she'll talk about. So she lives her life with a sense of mindfulness that, to me, is very reflective of somebody much older. She'll talk to us about the idea of legacy and how important it is to figure out what you enjoy doing and how you can use that to give back to people. And for her, that is her key to living a life with gusto. She also is currently host of the podcast, The Podcasting Party, which is a fun podcast which is geared to helping those who are developing their podcast. So let's get this party started. Welcome to the show, Alana.
Thank you so much, Gail. I'm so excited to be here. And just one teeny tiny correction. I'm actually from Idaho, not South Dakota, but I love South Dakota, so I'll take it.
Sorry. All right. Well, I'm glad you like South Dakota. I've never been to South Dakota, but okay. We'll take it.
I've lived everywhere. I'm a military spouse, so I've lived not South Dakota, but I've lived pretty much everywhere else in the United States. So
where in Iowa?
Idaho. Just outside
Idaho.
Boise.
Idaho. Okay. Right. Close. Okay. We're in Idaho?
Yep.
Boise? You're in Boise?
Just outside Boise. Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yep.
Great. Well, let's start out by, could you tell us about what happened? What was that life-changing event that kind of put you on the road that you're on today?
Yeah, you bet. So in 2015, as I said, we're a military family. We were living in Hawaii at the time. And I had a pulmonary embolism. And woke up in the middle of the night and thought I was having a heart attack. I was in the best shape of my life. I had been doing boot camp classes and had no reason to think that I would be having a heart attack or a pulmonary embolism. And so I woke up and I had pain on my left arm and numbness and sweaty and just knew something was the matter. So I woke up my husband and he woke up our two daughters, 9 and 6, and he rushed me to the emergency room. And so as I was being wheeled back into they had me in a wheelchair and was pulling me backwards. And the last thing I could see as the door was closing was my husband standing there with my two daughters, still bright, with rosy cheeks from sleep. And so, in that moment, we were all just kind of focused on what is happening and how do we fix it. And so I had to be transported from that particular ER. They didn't have the capacity to treat me there and rushed to a larger hospital in Honolulu. And I wasn't able to see my kids they put me in ICU. They didn't know if I'd make it through the night. I was on, clot busters and all kinds of different things to break up the clot. And I didn't get to see my girls. Got to see my husband briefly. And that event really, as I laid in bed that night in a dark hospital room, freezing cold, not knowing what the future held, that was a really defining moment in my life.
That would certainly rock your world. Yes.
Yes.
Wow.
And I had, I just thought, like, if this is it, like, if I don't get to see my girls again, what have I left for them as far as a legacy? What have I left behind? What will they remember? Mm-hmm. And also, I was a typical suburban mom. I focused on doing the next thing and volunteering for the next event and helping the next person. And I ran the rat race, and I ran it really well and really fast. And so coming out from that event, I knew that one, I wasn't going to continue on living my life that way, that I really wanted to hone in on focus on the most important things in life and the most important people primarily, which of course were my family and close friends.
That's great. That's quite a story. So you touched a little bit on the word legacy, and it's something I think everybody should think about, but we usually don't for some reason until something happens that's catastrophic, like what happened to you. So tell us more about how you use the word legacy, what it means to you, and how you use it today in your life as you're growing older.
Yeah. So legacy to me means what people will remember you by, what you leave behind. And for me, it's not a monetary value or, the goods, homes, cars. For me, that's not what it is. I know in a lot of, by a lot of definitions, that's how people think about legacy, but not for me. For me, it's what will people say to me and about me. And so as I was thinking through that and I didn't, probably then in the moment, I didn't use the word legacy, but I wanted to, if that was my last time with my girls, it just really put this importance on when I was able to leave the hospital and recover, like what did I want them to remember me by? And so those were the questions I asked. And so for me, that looks like, did I raise them right? Are they going to be, good people? What do they remember us doing as a family together? And everybody has to decide what that looks like for themselves. But for me, it looks like living into the calling and the purpose that I was put on this earth to fulfill, being a mom, being a wife, and doing that well.
That's nice. That's really nice. You strike me as somebody who has a lot of energy, and you put that into starting your podcast as one thing that you've done. Tell us about how that came about.
Yeah. So at the time that my embolism happened, I was actually, I had a successful blog for military spouses. And so that's one of the things I did is I wrote on that blog. That's how I kind of started this crazy online journey of mine. And then after I recovered, I was thinking about, do I want to continue to do that? And what does that look like? And decided, that I wanted to pivot a little bit more. I saw a lot of military spouses and women in general in all the different places that we had lived, really waiting and wishing to start their life. They say things like, I'll do that when my husband retires, or when we have more money in the bank, or when the kids are older. And we were all putting off something that we wanted to pursue. And of course, this life event really kind of just propelled me to like the front to charge and to be like, okay, I'm not going to wait any longer. And so kind of pivoted my blog, and my readership really fell off. And I couldn't decide if that was because of a different audience or if it was because of other circumstances. And so I did something smart that I didn't know was very smart at the time for somebody who was doing things online, is I asked my readers, I said, hey, what's going on? And they said, hey, we're listening to podcasts. And I thought, okay. And this is like 2016. So I thought, okay, I'm going to check out this podcast thing. And that's kind of how this whole thing started. Is I started a podcast called the Mom Wants More podcast, which was an extension of my blog, where I really encouraged women to step into their God-given passions and talents and giftings and to run in that lane for themselves. So that, of course, is not the podcast I have now, Gail.
I know.
And so from that, women started asking me, how do I start a podcast? And so now we're several years down the road, and I helped several launch. And after about the sixth one, my husband said, you should maybe think about making this a business. And so I launched the podcasting party last September. And then last April, Mom Wants More closed its doors. We're not producing any more episodes. So now I am back to just one podcast.
Well, that's good. You can focus on that.
Yes.
That's great. So if you had to talk about what living with Gusto looks like and growing older with Gusto from the time, let's say, that you had your embolism to now and the future? Has it changed any, or how are you doing that?
Yeah, this is such a great question. When I met you and I heard the name of your podcast, which I love, by the way,
Thank you.
I
Yours
thought,
too.
man, I feel like this applies to everyone, right?
Right.
Living your
With how
life.
old you are, right?
Yes, living your life with gusto, with that go get 'em, charge ahead attitude of, really living life and living it well. Again, whatever that looks like for you who is
Hmm.
listening. And so I think for me, it really that's what it is. It's living into my lane. It's living into what I feel called to do. And I think it's just really kind of opened my eyes, my embolism, but also helping other women to live into their
Hmm.
gusto, for lack of but we'll
Hmm.
just go with that. That's really kind of what I've found, is that so many of us don't think those steps ahead. We think about the here and the now, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if we look down into the future and down the road, and we think about, what do we want our legacy to be, what do we want people to remember us by, that's really going to then inform the choices we're
Hmm.
making today in our life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, are there any particular choices? I know you talk about giving back. Anything else that you've changed a little bit in your life as you're growing older with
Oh
lots of
gosh,
gusto?
yeah. I feel like I've changed a lot of stuff, but I'm really selective on what I choose to spend my time on and the
Hmm.
people I choose to spend with. So I probably have a lot less relationships than I once did. But that's so that I can lean in more to the relationships I do have. That's a big one. Um, White space, sometimes you don't have to have a reason to do something except for that it brings you joy.
Hmm.
And so one of the things I did this past year is I decided, I read a ton of nonfiction, and I love self-development books and all of that, educational books. But I decided, you know what, I don't read fiction books anymore, and I love it. And so I asked for Christmas that my family would get me a subscription to the Book of the Month Club, and every month I get
Good
a
idea.
fiction. Yeah, and so those are a lot of things. Yeah, giving back is a big one, and then of course just spending time with people I love.
Sounds good to me. Let's talk a little bit about bridging the gap between generations. Hopefully, our
Mm.
podcast is doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I absolutely love it. I think that one of the things that through podcasting that I've enjoyed so much is hearing so many different people's stories and all different walks of life and phases and ages. And I think podcasting is one of the avenues and the mediums that can really bridge that gap,
Hmm.
because it's so accessible, right? We can pop it in our ears and go about our daily lives and hear. It's not like we have to go to a certain place to meet with these people and hear their life experiences. And I also believe it's so important that we as younger generations are listening to the stories and the experience and the wisdom of people older than us, and vice versa.
Hmm.
My grandma says all the time she loves to hang out with us because we give her new life.
Yeah.
We're so upbeat and excited and have a different take on life. And I think that's so true
And it
for
helps her
us.
stay relevant. It helps her stay
Totally.
relevant. Yes.
Totally, it does.
Yeah.
Yes, even
So,
though still doesn't know what a podcast is, but that's okay. I don't blame her. One bit, she's still got a flip phone, so she can listen in other ways. But I think that's so important, is listening to other stories. I think that is the bridge to
Mhm.
cover that gap.
And tell us a little bit about the podcasting party. What
Yeah.
would you like people to know about that?
Sure. So the podcasting party is a podcast I say for podcasters of all stages and phases. So if you're thinking about starting a podcast, or you're a beginner, that is the place that you can go to listen in. And I give really practical step-by-step advice and tools and resources for starting. and growing your podcast. And I truly believe that podcasting is fun. I mean, there's nothing that I love more than hopping on and chatting with people, whether it's on my podcast or other podcasts. And so, we make it fun. It's not stuffy. It's not perfect. You're not going to come in here and NPR. Well, of course, because I'm a one-woman show, I do editing, and I don't have a Scott, and so it's just me. And so I love that about podcasting too. Is it should be fun and it should be accessible.
So, where do people go if they want to get in touch with you, Alana?
Yeah, probably the best spot that you can connect with me is my website. It's alanadawson.com. Just like it sounds, ALANADAWSON. And you can find the podcast there, services there, connect with me on any of your favorite social media outlets there as well.
Super. Anything else you want to say about growing older with gusto that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, Gail, I just want to say thank you so much for having me on. I love what you're doing with the show. It's such important work. And I think the only thing I would say is, like, if you haven't considered maybe the legacy that you're living or how you're bridging that gap, maybe that would be something that you could take a few minutes and think about today. I think that's it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for being on the show. It was great.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Sure. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to our channel and check out our website at www.growingolderwithgusto.com.